Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Subtle results, still you, but with fewer lines. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it. Guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Welcome back to the Murder Diaries. I'm Paige.
And I'm Natalie.
As always, if you would like to listen to this episode ad-free, you can do so on patreon.com/The Murder Diaries pod. Early in the day of August 27th, 1992, Vicki Felton left her 13-year-old daughter, Leigh Occhi, at home alone while she went to work. That day, a strong hurricane was making its way through their hometown of Tupelo, Mississippi, and Leigh was a bit nervous. Shortly after arriving at work, Vicki called home to check on Leigh, but got no answer. She went home after several unanswered phone calls and found blood throughout the house, and her daughter was missing. More than 3 decades after Leigh has disappeared, she still hasn't been found. This is her story.
Used to think it's in my head, but I'm walking with the dead.
Leigh Maureen Occhi was born on August 21st, 1979 in Honolulu, Hawaii, to Vicki Felton and Donald Occhi. Both Donald and Vicki served in the U.S. Army, and the two actually met while serving in California, and they got married in 1977. Donald told Investigation Discovery David's Lore that the birth of his first child, Leigh, was unlike anything he'd ever experienced, explaining, "Her birth was difficult because Vicki was in labor for about 18 hours. Leigh was the most beautiful baby I had ever seen. I felt so much love that I did not know I was capable of feeling. When I first held her, I cried like a baby. I had been responsible for the lives of many soldiers, but this tiny baby was mine to care for until one of us died. There was no comparison for this increased degree of responsibility. She smelled so sweet, her skin so soft. To me, each of her movements was a marvel. This tiny baby was actually mine, and that would never change." The marriage lasted a few more years, and the couple ultimately divorced in 1981. Donald was then stationed overseas in Germany, while Leigh and her mother moved to Tupelo, Mississippi, where Vicki's parents lived. A few years after relocating, Vicki remarried to a man named Barney Yarborough, who became Leigh's stepfather. The family lived on Honey Locust Drive in a 1-story brick home at the end of the cul-de-sac. Leigh's father, Donald, told the son, Harold, that Leigh was smart and sweet. He said she was a daddy's kid, like all little girls are. She liked to be hugged, and she liked pizza. She liked dogs. Leigh even spent a summer with her father in Germany when she was 7 or 8 years old. Donald described his memories of her trip to ID Discovery. "The summer she came to Germany, I enjoyed taking her to the castles, teaching her to speak German, and taking her on long bike rides. I taught her a phrase, and a German man behind us almost fell over laughing hysterically. She said, 'What did I say?' I answered, "You want to buy a lovely blouse made out of a cat?" She was both embarrassed and delighted. While in Germany, Leigh was able to spend a lot of time outside, which she loved. She was just a little girl, but Donald said that she was fearless. Quote, "She was not afraid to shoot my most powerful handguns. Another of our favorite things to do was go out after a heavy rain and drive the muddy trails on my four-wheel drive at a high rate of speed. The first time we hit a huge puddle and all the mud got over her, she had a shocked look on her precious face. It was unforgettable. We laughed like fools." It was so frustrating for Donald to live so far from his daughter, but he did his best to stay in contact with her. He was able to make a short visit to see her in Tupelo in the summer of 1991 before being deployed to Iraq.
Leigh was a very special teenage girl. She loved animals, especially horses, and spent a lot of her free time riding at a nearby stable. She was friendly, though she didn't always have the easiest time making friends. That didn't stop her from lighting up when she did finally connect with someone. Those who really got to know Leigh knew that she was kind-hearted and really just wanted to be loved. Her father described her as a beautiful little girl with unlimited potential.
On Thursday, August 27th, 1992, Vicki, Leigh's mother, woke up when her alarm went off at 6:45. At this time, Vicki had recently separated from Barry, Leigh's stepfather, so it was just her and her daughter at the home. Leigh had just turned 13 a few days earlier on the 21st, but despite now being a teenager, she was still scared of thunderstorms and had slept in her mother's bed. Hurricane Andrew was headed towards Tupelo, and though it would downgrade to a tropical storm before hitting the area, it was still expected to bring heavy rain and wind. When Vicki woke up, she said that Leigh was laying in the bed with her head down towards the foot of the bed. She would later explain that this is because she snored, so Leigh was probably trying to muffle the noise of her snoring while still wanting to sleep near her mom. Leigh was still sound asleep, so Vicki continued on with her morning routine. With Leigh being in the last days of her summer break before starting 8th grade, there was no real reason for Vicki to wake her. She was due to start back at school on Monday, so she was going to let her enjoy those last few days and those last few mornings of sleeping in. After finishing her shower, Vicki got dressed and noticed that Leigh was finally awake, but still laying in bed. She went to grab the newspaper from the yard, and when she came back in, Leigh was out of the bed. The two ate breakfast together and discussed their plans for the day. Leigh's grandmother was going to pick her up so that the three of them could attend Tupelo Middle School's open house. Then later, they'd head to dinner at Taco Bell. Around 7:40 a.m., Vicki left the house and headed towards her job at Leggett & Platt, which is a company that produced different textile products. Leigh was still in her pajamas when her mother pulled out of the garage. Vicki arrived at work just before 8 a.m. She later told the police that this was the first time that Leigh was left home alone, so Vicki grabbed a radio out of her supervisor's office so that she could listen for any weather alerts. When Vicki started hearing alerts for tornado watches in the area, she called to check in on Leigh around 8:30 a.m. Vicki said that she would always call, let the phone ring twice, then hang up and call again. This was the system they used to let Leigh know that it was her mom calling and that it was okay to answer and pick up the phone. The phone rang, but there was no answer. Vicki later told ID Discovery's David Lohr, "I went and got the radio out of my boss's office and put it on my desk so I could listen to the news for the weather because Leigh is very afraid of thunderstorms. The radio commentator was talking about the weather and the tornado watches or warnings or whatever it was and the severe thunderstorms. And after that, I decided I had better call home because I knew Leigh was really scared of the weather. So I called and we have a special ring. I did that. I let it ring for a long time that second time. Nobody answered." Vicki was worried, so she left work and made the short drive home, hoping she'd find Leigh at home, not even realizing that she had missed the phone ringing. When she arrived home, she found the garage door open and the light to the garage door opener on, which Vicki said would typically turn off just a few minutes after the door was opened or closed. Vicki explained to ID Discovery what she found inside. "The door was unlocked and I opened the house and it was all dark, so I didn't see Leigh anywhere. I said, 'Leigh?' like that, and nobody answered me. And then I went in. You go into the hallway and I saw blood right there, splattered on the wall. And then I screamed and started running. And I ran into her bedroom first. And then the brown blanket on the floor. And I thought maybe she was under it or something. And I picked it up and I don't know if the blood was lying next to it or underneath it. I saw that blood and I went running into my bedroom and pulled off the blanket to shake the covers. I went on there to see if she was under the bed there or something. Then I went in there and looked in the spare bedroom, and I looked in the closets. I looked in all the rooms in the house. And then I ran outside to the shed. The shed door was already unlocked, and opened up the door and looked in there and yelled and looked in the pool. And then I came back in and dialed 911.
Shortly after calling 911, Vicky called her parents, who lived just a few minutes away, and her husband Barry, who she'd recently separated from. The Tupelo Police Department responded to the home on Honey Locust Drive, hoping that they'd find that the 13-year-old girl who'd been reported missing had already returned home. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
One of the first officers on scene was Captain Bardaguerre. He recalled that morning clearly, responding through the rain and wind that Hurricane Andrew brought with it. Captain Aguirre recounted that day to ID Discovery, explaining that they found blood splatter on the door facing the kitchen, as well as a pool of blood on the carpet that led to Leigh's room. He went on to say that he observed that, to him, that the blood looked fresh. He described it saying, "It didn't have what I call a skin over the top of it." He also said that it looked like someone had actually tried to clean up a mess in the bathroom. When detectives arrived, Vicky's mother and father were both already there and trying to help their daughter figure out where Leigh was. To Captain Aguirre, the mood at the scene wasn't panicked. He later stated that Vicky, quote, wasn't hysterical. Vicky showed detectives to Leigh's bedroom where they found her nightgown on the floor. The nightgown had blood on it and it was collected for testing. Captain Aguirre immediately recognized the scene was odd, that something didn't seem right. He told ID Discovery there was no sign of any kind of forced entry to the house or anything like that. The house was not torn up or in disarray. There was evidence there that would lead one to believe that Leigh Occhi's head struck that door frame, received an injury, and laid there on that carpet and bled. There was quite a bit of pooling of blood. It was probably about the size of my fist. An area about that big, and it was still wet, very wet. A random criminal would not take the time to try to clean up and wipe down the bathroom countertop and the sink to make sure all the blood was washed out of there. There was definitely blood on the countertop. A very light pink haze was on the sink countertop and down in the bowl. And there was a swab that was taken and tested and proved to be blood. Once the detectives put together Vicky's account of the timeline and movements of her and Leigh from that morning, this only increased their suspicions that this wasn't going to be a straightforward case. Captain Aguirre explained, if you look at that timeline, from the time she left and went to work and the time she started calling and getting no answer, probably an hour, hour and a half, our perpetrator, whoever it may be, is going to come in that house, assault Leigh Occhi, and clean up that crime scene in that hour and a half time frame? If you couldn't already tell by my intonation, I want to note here that Captain Aguirre is questioning this here. This quote literally ends with a question. He doesn't know if a perpetrator would have had the time within that hour and a half time frame to break into the house, assault Leigh, abduct her or take her body with him, and have cleaned up this crime scene. Once police had fully searched the house and the property and determined that Leigh wasn't there, they began coordinating searches of the surrounding areas. Helicopters were in the air and first responders and volunteers were on the ground, hoping to find Leigh or at least something that might help point them in the right direction. Unfortunately, they came up empty-handed. The Tupelo Police Department brought in bloodhounds to see if they could track Leigh's scent, but the heavy wind and rain from Hurricane Andrew made it impossible. The weather had either completely covered her scent or she'd never been that way in the first place, and truly there was no real way to tell. Detectives continued to analyze the findings at the family's home. The blood found on the door frame looked like it was consistent with head trauma to somebody who was about 5 feet tall. Leigh was just under that at 4'10". Captain Aguirre said that the belief that Leigh might have injured her head on that door frame was further sealed for him by the presence of blood on her discarded nightgown. He told the Sun-Herald, because it looked like blood had dropped down onto her nightgown, you would think that the injury had to be above the neck, possibly. Vicky confirmed that a few of Leigh's possessions were missing from the home, including a pair of shoes, her reading glasses, a sleeping bag, and underwear that had been part of a bra underwear set that she'd received recently for her birthday. As word spread around the community that Leigh was missing, everyone was shocked that a 13-year-old girl could just disappear. Her boyfriend, 12-year-old Jordan, said that he used to call her every day when he got home from school, since the two attended different schools. On August 27th, though, Jordan told the Sun-Herald that, I rushed off the bus like I always did to call her as soon as I got home from school, and her mom picked up the phone. I asked where Leigh was, and Vicky said she was missing. I don't know what missing is. I'm 12 years old. What do you mean missing? She said, we don't know where she is. We can't find her. Rick Hammond was a crime reporter for the Daily Journal at the time and said that the town of Tupelo was considered to be a safe community. People even felt comfortable leaving their doors unlocked. Once Leigh disappeared, though, Rick Hammond told the Sun-Herald things changed. Quote, this was really alarming and people wanted to know what happened. I think people wanted some sort of reassurance that this wasn't a stranger who showed up at a house and abducted a girl. And no one really knew. When you're starting out with something new, like when Natalie and I started the Murder Diaries podcast, it feels so overwhelming and like you have to figure everything out on your own. And there's 1,000,001 new hats that you have to wear and figure out how to be comfortable wearing them. Finding the right tools during those moments is so important. For millions of people who are starting out with new businesses, Shopify is that tool. Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started. You get to start out with your own design studio, which includes hundreds of templates. So Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand's style. With Shopify, you can also get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. You can easily create and email social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling and strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping and processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/murderdiaries. That's shopify.com/murderdiaries.
My parents did an incredible job of helping me build healthy associations with money. It wasn't just about learning numbers, it was about understanding how balance and intentionality shaped our financial lives. Those early lessons set me up for success and helped me navigate the real world with more confidence when it came to money. And it's a big reason why I'm so excited to share today's sponsor with you, Acorns Early. Acorns Early is a smart money app and a debit card for kids that helps them learn the value of money. Kids can spend what they earn with their very own debit card. They'll love the new sense of independence and getting to choose from 35 plus customizable card designs. Plus, parents can keep track of where and when their kids are spending. You can get real-time spend notifications, set your kids' spending limits, and instantly block lost or stolen cards. They might not realize it now, but starting to invest early is going to have a huge impact on their financial future. And the best part? It's simple. And Acorns Early is such a smart, accessible tool to do that. If you're looking for a way to make a real difference in the financial future of the younger people in your life, Acorns Early is an amazing place to start. Ready to help your kids learn the value of money? Just head to acornsearly.com/diaries or download the Acorns Early app to get started. Sign up now and your first month is on us. T&Cs apply. Monthly subscription fee starting from $5 per month unless canceled.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
The searches throughout Tupelo for Leigh continued. Multiple organized searches through nearby fields, wooded areas, and even a drainage ditch directly behind the family's home yielded nothing. Though police were able to collect samples from the blood at the home, they couldn't verify whether it was Leigh's or not because her blood had never been typed.
Detectives began questioning those closest to Leigh, including her mother and stepfather. The couple had separated for about a month before Leigh disappeared, which made investigators strongly consider and continue to investigate if there was any sort of domestic situation that could have led to Leigh disappearing. Both were given polygraph tests. However, the results were initially kept confidential. A task force was formed specifically to investigate and search for Leigh, made up of 2 police detectives and 2 North Mississippi Narcotics Unit agents. Master Sergeant Jamie Harper, who was the lead on the investigation, told the Commercial Appeal that, quote, many off-duty officers are working their normal caseloads as well as this case. He also explained that while they were doing their best to stay hopeful, it was getting difficult, saying, we want to maintain optimism, but the more time that goes by, the less optimism we have finding Leigh alive. It was extremely frustrating for detectives to find confirmed blood at the scene, but be unable to say for sure whether it was Leigh's or not. Captain Aguirre told news outlets, when you go back and look at her medical records, that child has never been to the hospital or had blood work done. There was nothing to use for a comparison. That made it really difficult in trying to say that the blood left at the scene was in fact Leigh Occhi's. It wasn't long before it was revealed to the public that Vicky had taken a total of 3 polygraph tests, 2 of which were administered by the FBI and failed all 3 of them. When asked to comment on why she failed them, Vicky said, I couldn't tell you why. They measure changes in your body, and when your daughter's gone missing and they strap you up to things, I can't imagine anyone's body not reacting. A few days after her disappearance, an employee at a fast food restaurant in Boonville reported seeing someone who looked like Leigh in a truck in the drive-thru. The employee said that the girl had been in a blue truck that was driven by a black male. Boonville is about 30 miles north of Tupelo, so investigators had hope that this could be a good tip. Unfortunately, they determined that this was not Leigh and just another dead end. Crime reporter Rick Hammond, who we mentioned earlier, continued to follow the case closely and told the Sun-Herald, the first few days it was very frenzied in terms of trying to find out if she might be alive somewhere and injured, looking for places she might have been hidden, injured, lost. Over the course of the first few weeks, that started to change into a concern that they were looking for a body, not a live girl anymore. However, on September 9th, just under 2 weeks after Leigh disappeared, a strange package was mailed to her house. It was an 8-inch envelope, and the address was handwritten in block letters to B. Yarborough, Barney Yarborough, her stepfather. The address was correct, except for the street name Honey Locust was spelled without the E in honey. The return address was the same as the one it was mailed to, and also included B. Yarborough. Inside the envelope were Leigh's missing eyeglasses, nothing else. The envelope had a postage stamp on it from Boonville, which, strangely enough, is, yes, the same Boonville that there had been that reported sighting of Leigh in the fast food drive-thru in the truck. Though that sighting, again, was found not to be credible, it is certainly an odd coincidence. The envelope was sent to the FBI crime lab to have the handwriting analyzed and to test for DNA. The original lead detective on the case, prior to the task force taking over, Major Ronnie Thomas, told the Sun-Herald, we didn't bother with the state crime lab. I was hoping to get DNA off the back of the stamps, but the stamps were wet with water. The package had more than enough postage on it, and it was dropped in a mailbox in Boonville.
Investigators were initially hopeful that this might be the key to tracking Leigh down or at least finding out who was behind her disappearance. But unfortunately, they got nothing from the crime lab. Captain Aguirre expressed to the Sun-Herald how they began to think that the package and the glasses were just a red herring, that they were really just sent to distract investigators and throw them off the trail of the real story. Aguirre said there was no ransom letter or anything like that came with those glasses. It was just those glasses.
A few weeks later, in mid-September, Donald Leigh's father, who had been stationed in Virginia, arrived in Tupelo along with his wife, Kathy, and 2 children. He immediately joined the search parties who were scouring the city and neighborhoods for his daughter. Not only did he come into what was already a panicked city, desperate for answers, but he was immediately bombarded with rumors from the community. Most were regarding the belief that his ex-wife and Leigh's mother was involved in her disappearance. Donald told the Sun-Herald, I stayed for about a month. We searched all around Tupelo. People called me and contacted me all the time. It was mostly stuff about, like, she was a great little girl or look at her mother. I was already doing that. I don't know if her mother was involved. The Sun-Herald, along with several other publications, have reported that there were rumors that Leigh's stepfather, Barney, had possibly abused her. Leigh would show up to school with black eyes or bruises, which she always contributed to an accident while riding at the stables with horses. One of her classmates reported that she'd once seen Leigh eating berries from a bush in the schoolyard. When she told Leigh that she should be careful that some berries were poisonous, Leigh reportedly responded that she didn't really care and that maybe she wanted to die. Leigh spoke with a school counselor after this, but she told everyone that she was fine and she was just making a joke. Sergeant Harper told news outlets that they were also hearing similar rumors. Quote, "We've had very few calls from the press, and those are primarily to get confirmation of the rumors. But the majority of calls have come in from private citizens worrying about what they've heard. We've spent quite a bit of time trying to quell these very horrible rumors." Captain Aguirre said that Barney passed his polygraph exam and that he was very cooperative with the investigation. He was living in an apartment complex in Tupelo when Leigh disappeared and would regularly come to help with searches and to speak with the police. He was ruled out as a suspect before his death in December of 1996. Despite the rumors that circulated throughout the community about her involvement, Vicki told crime reporter David Lohr that she doesn't let it bother her and she stays focused on just the facts. "It's never been about me. It's finding Leigh, and I didn't care and still don't care what anyone says about any of it. I have never not cooperated with anybody. I want to find my daughter. I'm not fazed by what they say. I have thicker skin than that. I am more reasonable than that. If that bothered me, I would have not been able to cope. But that is not the focus, and that is not a problem." The community did everything they could to support the Occhis. Local companies donated money to help the family stay in Tupelo as long as they could. The Holiday Inn donated free rooms for them to stay in, and the Holy Trinity Lutheran Church Daycare Center kept their 2 children while Donald and Kathy searched, sometimes until midnight. Though so many people continued to hold hope that Leigh was still alive, Donald believed that the longer she was missing, the less likely it was that they'd find her safe. He told the Commercial Appeal, "I don't think she's alive. I'm just getting prepared for the worst."
Vicki and Barry gathered money to post a $2,000 reward for information leading to Leigh's whereabouts. Tips and reported sightings continued to come in, but nothing really panned out. And it really didn't seem like they were getting any closer to finding out what happened to Leigh or where she was.
So good, so good, so good.
New markdowns up to 70% off are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Fresh kicks, spring tops, new dresses. There's always a score.
I mean, the denim section is unreal.
Why do I rack? All the dresses.
I always find something amazing.
Head to your Nordstrom Rack store to find can't-miss deals on all the spring things. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Seeing as there were no signs of forced entry at the Occhi home, Vicki felt confident that her daughter would not have opened the door for someone that she didn't know and didn't trust. This led Vicki to strongly believe that a man by the name of Oscar McKinley Mike Kearns was responsible. Not only was Mike a teacher at the Occhi's Holy Trinity Lutheran Church Sunday School and Vacation Bible School, he often rode horses at the same stable that Leigh did, off North Thomas Street in Tupelo. Mike lived in West Tupelo, only about a mile from Leigh's house on Honey Locust. Mike was no stranger to law enforcement. When the Sun-Herald reported on Leigh's case and her mother's suspicions of Mike in 2017, it explained that Mike was imprisoned at the Mississippi State Penitentiary after pleading guilty to kidnapping a couple and sexually assaulting the wife in 1999. This wasn't the only crime that Mike was involved in. In May of 1993, Mike drove to Memphis and kidnapped a 15-year-old girl that he met through the church in Tupelo. He drove to her house around 7 a.m. and got her into his vehicle under the pretext of him driving her to school. Instead, he took her to a remote area and sexually assaulted her, then drove her to school. Fortunately, the victim contacted police immediately and Mike was apprehended. He was charged and pled guilty to rape and was sentenced to 24 years in prison with 16 years suspended. Unfortunately, he was released after only having served less than half the suspended sentence in October of 1997. Just a year and a half later, we have the 1999 case where Mike abducted the couple and assaulted the wife, landing him back in jail. Investigators attempted to question Mike multiple times regarding Leigh's disappearance, but he refused each time. News outlets also attempted to reach out to him while he was incarcerated, but he never responded. In 2019, Mike was released from prison, and in 2021, he died without ever speaking publicly or to investigators about Leigh Occhi. On November 2nd, 1993, just over a year after Leigh went missing, A farm worker named Ray was harvesting soybeans on a farm in Chickasaw County, about 40 miles southwest of Tupelo, when he discovered a human skull. He handed the skull over to his employer, who promptly contacted law enforcement. The state crime lab in Jackson determined that the skull was that of a white female under the age of 30 who had died in the past 2 years. Shortly after, dental records were used to confirm the skull belonged to Leigh Occhi. The skull had been found in a muddy field about 900 feet from the road. As searchers began to comb the rest of the field and surrounding areas for further clues, they found skeletal remains and clothing about 50 yards away from where the skull was found. The Commercial Appeal reported that Sam Howell of the State Medical Examiner's Office estimated about 40% of the major bones of the skeleton were recovered. The case was now considered a homicide based on the location of the remains and the entire situation of Leigh's disappearance. Less than a week later, the State Medical Examiner's Office retracted their ruling and stated that the remains in the skull did not belong to Leigh Occhi. When Leigh's dental records were sent to the medical examiner's office to verify that they were using her most recent records, it was found that they weren't and that they were not a match. In fact, there were only 4 teeth left inside the skull. Monroe County Sheriff told the Mississippi Press, "If this is not Leigh Occhi, then we have a homicide in our county that we have got to follow up on." He said that to his knowledge, there were no unsolved murders in his county and that the only 2 open missing persons cases involved white males. Though it was determined that the remains did not belong to Leigh, they still believed the skull belonged to a white female under the age of 30 and that she was most likely the victim of a homicide. It was eventually found that the remains belonged to 27-year-old Pollyanna Sue Keith, who disappeared from Shannon, Mississippi in March of 1993. Unfortunately, there is no available information on what led to Pollyanna's death, but it doesn't seem that it was ever considered to be linked to Leigh's disappearance. In 2016, investigators reportedly took the testimony of a witness who may have seen something important on the morning of Leigh's disappearance. Stories of the Unsolved reported that a local garden center owner had been driving by Honey Locust Drive that August morning when she saw a male and a female walking through the downpour on the side of the road. As the witness drew closer to them, she said that the man pulled up his hood and put his arm around the female's shoulder, pulling her closer. The witness said that she passed them and the female didn't appear to be injured, but, quote, gave off the sense that she was frightened. The witness considered offering them a ride due to the weather, but decided against it because she had a strange feeling. When she got to the next stop sign, she checked her rearview mirror, but the 2 were gone. When this witness learned about Leigh's disappearance, she contacted the police and waited for a call back. But that didn't come for several years, after she'd shared her stories with other outlets. She described the male she'd seen as short with a thick build, gray hair, and a scruffy beard, wearing an army-type green jacket. Despite this witness report, Leigh's case eventually grew cold as detectives were unable to find any substantial clues or suspects. In October of 2024, Vicki filed a petition with the Lee County Chancery Court to have Leigh declared legally dead. Her father also signed the petition, which was granted, and Leigh Occhi was legally declared deceased. Though Donald pretty quickly settled on the belief that his daughter was no longer alive, it didn't make it any easier for him to deal with the not knowing. He told crime reporter Dave Lohr, "I wish that I had told her how much she meant to me and how much I loved her. I was not a very affectionate person then and did not care for hugging and such, though she sure enjoyed it. I will regret this until the day I die. I want to live to see her body located so that I can see she is properly buried. Leigh was a beautiful girl with unlimited potential. All I have is the memories. God, I miss her." In January of this year, 2025, WTVA 9 in Tupelo reported live from the scene behind the Occhi's former home on Honey Locust. Law enforcement vehicles and personnel, along with the crime lab, were spotted digging in and around the drainage ditch that ran parallel with the Occhi and their neighbors' backyards. Reporters said that there were people wearing shirts that indicated that they were associated with the FBI or SBI, as well as dogs that looked to be searching for something. Shortly after the report, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation released the following statement. On January 29, 2025, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation Cold Case Unit, in the collaboration with the Tupelo Police Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, conducted a search near Honey Locust Drive in Tupelo, Mississippi, as part of the ongoing investigation into the 1992 disappearance of Leigh Occhi. While findings from the search cannot be disclosed at this time, investigators remain committed to following all leads and gathering information related to the case. No further comments will be made at this time. At the time of Leigh's disappearance, she was 13 years old, stood at 4 feet 10 inches and 95 pounds. She is a white female with blonde hair and hazel eyes. Leigh has a strawberry birthmark at the base of her skull, along with pierced ears and needs eyeglasses. If you have any information about the disappearance of Leigh Occhi, please contact the Tupelo Police Department at 662-841-6491.
That's it for this week's case coverage on the Murder Diaries, but be sure to connect with us on social media at the Murder Diaries Pod. We're available everywhere. Instagram, TikTok, even YouTube, or even come hang out with us on Mondays with our unscripted episodes. We'd love to see you there. Until then,
stay safe.
Bye.
The search for truth never ends. Introducing June's Journey, a hidden object mobile game with a captivating story. Connect with friends, explore the Roaring 20s, and enjoy thrilling activities and challenges while supporting environmental causes. After 7 years, the adventure continues with our immersive travels feature. Explore distant cultures and engage in exciting experiences. There's always something new to discover. Are you ready? Download June's Journey now on Android or iOS.